In 49 states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana. Our two star players, Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam, put our team on their backs, and they just decided that we were not going to lose this game today.
And that MVP is Pascal Siakam.
First of all, shout out Indy, man. It's been such an amazing experience for me so far. From the first day I landed here, like the love has been amazing. Chad, KP, just unbelievable, man. Like, you know, first class organization.
And then tonight, sometimes the unexpected happens. And sometimes Thomas Bryant catches fire from deep.
Yeah, Thomas, yeah!
You're not going to have to worry about any questions about the team trying harder than you did tonight, because it was obvious, man. You guys did a great job. Congratulations. Look, you are the longest tenured member of this team. 10 seasons wearing this uniform. And now you're going to the NBA Finals, man. Tell me what that does for you.
Woo, man, it's been a long time coming, man. Come on. Man, first of all, man, I got to give a huge shout out to the Simons, man. They never stopped believing in me. This front office, this organization is amazing. I've spent a third of my life here, man. It's crazy. You know, I've really grown up here with y'all. And it's so validating just to get this in this fashion against one of our rivals 25 years later. And I'm just excited for what's next, man. We got 4 more.
But for the first time in 25 years, they are going to the NBA Finals.
Hello, Pacer fans, and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, your home for all things Indiana Pacers, all postseason long. I'm your host, Logan, and well, let's just say Game 2 didn't go as we hoped, and we are going to talk about just what that means for the Pacers going forward. But the Indiana Pacers fell to the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 2 of the NBA Finals. It was a rough one on the offensive end. The Thunder brought the intensity, relentless, physical, suffocating defense all night long, and our guys just could not find the rhythm at Oklahoma City. Shots didn't fall, ball movement stalled, and OKC made us pay. But let's keep this in perspective. This series is now tied 1-1, headed back to Indianapolis. And honestly, before this all started, if you would have told us that we would split in OKC, I think everybody in this fan base would have taken that. We steal Game 1 on the road in dramatic fashion, and now we've got 2 in front of our home crowd at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The stage is set. The energy will be electric. The opportunity right in front of us. We'll break down what went wrong in Game 2, what adjustments need to be made, and how the Pacers can bounce back with vengeance in Game 3. All that and more right here on the Pacers Fever Show. So let's get into it. And just like in the intro the last time we were in this building, we clinched to go to the NBA Finals. And for the first time in 25 years, the Indiana Pacers will play a home NBA Finals game against Oklahoma City on Wednesday, June 11th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Almost forgot the date there. Had to go back and figure out where that was in my notes. I couldn't remember what day it was today. We are recording this on Tuesday evening, so just 24 hours, I guess a little bit more, before tip-off of Game 3 at Gainbridge. A lot of stuff to cover today. The media met with the two teams. They were practicing in Indianapolis this morning, so a lot to cover and go over there because there were some interesting sights that were seen in Gainbridge Fieldhouse when it comes to what to expect for the fans tomorrow and what to expect from the players that'll be out on the court. They went through media, so there were some quotes and things that we possibly will discuss at the end of this episode, previewing Game 3. Unfortunately, I was going to split this episode into 2, but because of my anniversary being over the last weekend, and I came down with something on Saturday night, so it was not the best of weekends. I didn't feel great at all watching the game on Sunday, not just because of the play on the court, but also just didn't feel good on Sunday. Wasn't able to record until now, so it took a couple of hours, obviously, to get recovering and get going towards Game 3 for myself, and I'm sure the guys feel the same way. But it's good to be back on this Tuesday evening talking to you all about the Indiana Pacers being tied 1-1 in the NBA Finals with home court advantage in our possession. It's a big game, game 3. And, everybody will say that there's certain games are the turning point of the series. And this game's the most important. But it does feel like game 3 is probably the most important game of this series because it could go 2 different ways based off of the results of this game. One would be Oklahoma City wins game 3, and the Pacers are fighting like heck to win game 4 to make sure that it stays 2-2 headed back to Oklahoma City. If the Pacers lose game 3 and 4, this series feels all but over. I mean, you lose 2 games at home, lose 3 in a row. It is a tough sledding that you'll have to do against the Oklahoma City Thunder team that was the best team in the NBA. You would then have to win 3 straight games, with 2 games of those being on the home court of the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that's a very difficult place to play. As we've seen, not many teams come out of there with victories, and not many teams win against this Oklahoma City Thunder team. As I think they said it was way back early in the season when they had last lost 2 games in a row. If I'm even, I'll have to look at Oklahoma City Thunder's schedule. That's really a mouthful to say. They changed their name to Oklahoma. But yeah, we're going to go back in time and look at the Thunder's schedule, because I think what they said was that they haven't lost 2 games in a row since early on in the season. And honestly, being an East Coast Eastern Conference fan, it is hard for me to try to remember if Oklahoma City did end up losing 2 games in a row. Yes, so it looks like they lost 2 games in a row this season, just one or twice. They did it in April, but as that, April, when you're losing games, when you're that far ahead in the standings, those are games that I think you're okay losing. They lost 2 games against Houston and LA back on April 4th and April 6th. And then you have to go all the way back to November when they lost 2 in a row before the Houston and LA back-to-back losses. They lost November 17th against Dallas at home, and then went on the road against San Antonio and lost that game on November 19th. So only 2 times this year have they lost 2 games in a row for a team that absolutely ransacked the league, took over, and just dominated for a majority of the season. I mean, it's been really tough for other teams to try to even come close to beating this Oklahoma City Thunder team. I think they said there were different stats that were coming out yesterday, and I think they were talking about this one on 1070 The Fan. I think Kevin Bowen brought it up, but he said that he'd found a stat in which Shai Gilgeous had 20 games in which he did not play in the fourth quarter this year. If that's true, that's insane. Like, that just goes to show you how many games this team have they've blown out their opponents. And then I also saw a stat where the Thunder, I think, they have more wins by 10 points or more than the Pacers had all season, which is another insane stat, and just shows you how good this team is. And honestly, I mean, this is the challenge that you want to win an NBA title, right? We talked about this at the very beginning when we were previewing this series, is that, and Tyrese Halliburton has said it, Rick Carlisle has said it, Pascal Siakam, they talk about, to be the best, you want to beat the best. And I think if you beat the Oklahoma City Thunder to win your first NBA title, this Oklahoma City Thunder team will be a historic win for this Indianapolis franchise, obviously because it's their first title. But I think it'll go down as one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive, feat by any team. And I was actually looking at, there's a stat that I'll share later on in this episode, where the Pacers have had the toughest journey and path to the NBA Finals. So if they were to win this would be the most impressive win by a team, especially a 4 seed, to win the NBA title. And I think that just is a testament to how good this Pacers team has been all year. And we've run up against a Goliath in the Oklahoma City Thunder, but I feel like if there was a David to pull this off, it would be the Indiana Pacers and this version of that team, because I feel really good about where we sit, even though, you could look at how the games went in game 1 and game 2, but I think there's some silver lining that you can take from the last 2 games and apply it to game 3. And I think you have to take into consideration into the fact that Gainbridge Fieldhouse is a very difficult place to win as well. Indiana has always performed well at Gainbridge, and I don't think it'll change necessarily. I think that you're going to see a different type of Indiana team that you've seen in this series. And they talked to Rick Carlisle today on 1070 Fan, and he said that, they haven't played well. 7 of the 8 quarters that they've played, they've been outmatched by this Oklahoma City Thunder team. And I know a lot of people will run with it and say that this is just business as usual, as Colin Cowherd has said, business as usual for the Oklahoma City Thunder, that this is just going to be a gentleman's sweep at this point, and that the Pacers don't really stand a chance in this series. But I think there are some things that we can look at that should at least give you some confidence in what this team might be able to pull off over the next couple of days, because game 3 and game 4 have the shortest break in between them. There is only 1 day in between game 3 and 4, which I think is advantage Pacers in the way that they like to operate. If they can operate at the level in which they were, say, against the Knicks and the Cavs. And, there's probably a lot of listeners saying, how can you do that against this Oklahoma City Thunder defense? I mean, this defense has been unbelievable to watch and to play against, I imagine. But there are some interesting facts that we'll go over, but we'll get into that for game 3 preview at the end of this episode. So the first, 10, 15 minutes, we're going to talk about game 2. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Obviously, it's not easy to rehash a loss. And I know a lot of fans don't like to kind of hash out the losses, but we got to do it just because I think there's some things that Indiana is going to need to do in game 3 that need to change. And I think there are some positives to take out of game 2 as well, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. But Pacers were handcuffed when the game mostly mattered in the first half. Indiana shot only 34.9% in the opening half, didn't dominate the rebounding as much as they did in game 1, and did not get any extra shots. No Pacer scored over 20 points, so that was not a good effort. And this effort was matched with an OKC team that was, and I think that's another thing, that when you're thinking about this game heading into game 3 and you're redoing game 2 in your head and trying to figure out, okay, where did it go wrong? What can Indiana do to fix it? As you're leading up into game 3 and kind of pre-gaming, listen to this episode or whatever it might be, I think one thing you definitely have to take away is just the fact that if OKC go down 0-2 and they drop the first 2 games at home, that's dire straits. That's pretty much giving Indiana the NBA title, because it would be very difficult to win 4 games out of 5, no matter how good your defense is and how good you are at home. You then go back to Indianapolis down 0-2, and you would have to face this Pacer team that, I'm going to tell you, that the crowd and the energy and the intensity is going to be the difference in game 3 or game 4. I just have this feeling of Gainbridge being a huge advantage for Indiana, because I think that we have a lot to aspire to be the same kind of energy and deterrent that I think the OKC fans can be at times. And just the fact that they bring so much to a team that's playing on their home floor, I think Indiana and Gainbridge have to match that. So we'll see what the fans bring to game 3, but I do think that you saw a very desperate OKC team in this game. And honestly, when they're that desperate and the shots start to fall, and mind you, the Pacers were in it up until the later part of that first quarter, I think, is when it started to kind of get loose from them. But they were only down 6 at the end of that first quarter. I mean, if the Pacers go on a 6 or 7, 8 point run to open the second, then you're talking about a different game, I think, a much closer game than what it turned out to be. But just because the Pacers go on an 0-9 run, I mean, the Thunder go on a 9-0 run, a better way to phrase that, and really took advantage of this game, I thought, when that first quarter came to an end. Tyrese Halliburton goes to the bench. And for a game that was as tight as it was, I mean, that once Halliburton comes back in, I think the Pacers were down by 12 or 13 already. So a huge advantage for OKC. They got some production from guys that they needed production from, but then they also had some really good performances by some of their bench players. And I think as you look at the history of the league and the history of the postseason and look at role players are a little bit less effective. Obviously, each of them are in games on the road against other teams on their home floor. So we will see what happens with an Alex Caruso or Wiggins or Wallace. We'll see how effective they are, because I think that their value does drop some as they head to Gainbridge, just because that seems to be the trend for every role player across the league. Star players and superstars are going to be stars and superstars no matter where they're playing. But the role players are so instrumental in a playoff series and a playoff game to win you games, and they typically don't perform as well because of the energy where they're going. So we'll see what happens. But OKC, again, this whole postseason have responded so very well. I know we talk a lot about this with the Pacers. They haven't lost back-to-back games in this postseason. The Pacers haven't, knock on wood. But and even going back to the regular season, there's not many times where Indiana drops games. And if they lose by 10 or more points in the regular season, I think their record was 11-0 when so they did not lose games after losing by a margin of 10 or more. So they would come back the next game and win. And that's an incredible feat, and I think an incredible stat. So it's not just OKC dominated, stat heavy, where it's these crazy records and stats that we're throwing from OKC side of things, but we've got some of those as well for the Pacers, because they've been that good. I mean, they really have. So Indiana looking to try to get the advantage here and go up 2-1 in game 3. That's going to be very important. But knowing OKC, it's going to be very difficult to do. And like I said, they fell behind 1-0 to the Nuggets, came back, leveled that series. Then the Nuggets jump out to another 2-1 lead, and then OKC recover and then win that series in 7 games. You know, if the Pacers come out and win game 3, I don't think the job is done. I think the Pacers have to take advantage of their ability to steal game 1, and they did it. And then you bring that back home, and I think you've got to capitalize on the game that you took in their house and try to keep home court advantage throughout the rest of this series. And that will require the Pacers winning 2 straight games against a Thunder team that has not done that very many times this season. And so I think it's going to be a tall task for the Pacers, but I feel really good about that being at Gainbridge, and I feel good about the Pacers playing better on their home floor and the offense being unlocked more so, the shooters hitting more shots at home because they've been a good shooting team on their home floor, and especially in the playoffs. So we will see what the home court advantage brings to Indiana. But in that game 2, they just never answered the bell. And even at times when they went on those, what felt like false runs, I mean, there was one where they go on an 8-0 run, they cut the deficit back to about 13 points. They get within 12 to 13 points late in the game as well, as far late in the game, I mean, in the third quarter. But then the Thunder just step on the pedal and bring it right back to 19 points. And by the end of the third quarter, I think the Thunder end up leading by 19 points. And it never felt that the Pacers were going to get to that point. And it didn't have that feel like it did in game 1, where in game 1, I felt the Pacers unlocked some things offensively. They got points in the paint. They got offensive rebounds. They were the more aggressive team. They were the aggressor in that game and in that win. Tyrese Halliburton with the big shot at the end to win game 1. But if you look at that second half, I felt like the Pacers overall, if you look at the half in total, I thought the Pacers were the better team. So I know Rick said that 7 out of the 8 quarters, he felt like Oklahoma City had dominated. But if you go back to game 1, the Pacers won that third quarter and that fourth quarter. And I think that was a lot of the difference, obviously, to catch up to the Thunder, because the Thunder lead by double digits at halftime. And I felt that Indiana did start to play more to their pace and getting points in the paint and hitting mid-range shots. That opened up, and Andrew Nembhard opened up a lot of that offense. And I think that was something that was lacking early on in game 2. And I think as the game goes on, they're not hitting their shots. Nembhard's not nearly as effective as he was in game one, and Tyrese Halliburton was pretty much shut out for 3 of those quarters in game two. So it just nothing was really going their way in that game. And in the fourth quarter, Halliburton starts to go on a roll, but again, he scores 12 points out of his 17 in the fourth, when the fourth was pretty much out of reach the whole time. I mean, they never really got it down, I don't think, to a manageable number to where I felt like it was possible that the Pacers could come back. But there were some things that they were doing, I think, on the offensive side of the ball, and Halliburton, I think that's big for his confidence, having scored 12 points in that last quarter. And I know that each game is different when you're talking about the NBA playoffs. Game to game, it's a different kind of story than the chapters written each time. But I did feel that Tyrese, it was important for him to see those shots start to fall, where I think that so much of his game is built off of confidence, getting to the paint, involving his teammates, but also trying to decipher when he needs to take over games. And he's still a young player, so he's still trying to figure out, okay, the main thing that makes this Pacer team successful, and that's what the national media just doesn't understand. Like, they don't watch the Pacers enough, so they don't quite understand the importance of what Ty does outside of the points and assist that he gets. I think so much of it is his ability to get into the paint, his ability to move the basketball, to get open, to create a bunch of space off of pick and rolls, even when he's not necessarily the primary ball handler, or even in possessions where he gives up the ball early on in that possession, and then it's 2 or 3 passes from somebody else, cuts and backdoors or whatever it might be. But it's just that initiation and that first move that he often makes, or that first action that he runs through, or the screens that are set off ball for him. I feel that those are very important things that just get overlooked. They're never going to show up in a box score. And let's be honest, the national media has 10 to 15 games to watch at night. Probably not turning on the Pacers game. They're probably turning on one of the big markets that obviously bring in more ratings, that bring more people to their channels and to their talk shows or whatever they're covering it on. But I do feel that there is a misunderstanding sometimes of what Tyrese Halliburton really is and truly is to this team. He's an engine. I mean, that's the best way to try to describe it. I think you have to go back and look at the importance of a person like Steve Nash, and Nash was more inclined to score, but I feel his main objective every game is to get his teammates involved as much as possible in the offense, because that's when the Pacers are most effective. And you see what happens when Tyrese comes off the floor, even in games that he struggled. I mean, they were right in this game, and then they remove him from the game, and Oklahoma City balloons their lead to double digits. He'll get back into the game, bring them a little bit closer, or back in the game where they go on these runs, and then all of a sudden, he's out there with a second unit team, and the starters aren't out there with him, and then Oklahoma City balloons the lead. So again, I think it's going to be an interesting balance to see how Indiana handles his minutes. And I'm starting to think that the Pacers, I get that your strength is in numbers and running big rotations out there, but if you are not playing at the pace in which the breakneck speed that the Pacers typically play at anyway, I feel that Carlisle might need to make that adjustment where, he does shrink down the rotation some, where he goes 8 to 9 guys. And I'm starting to feel that, and we've said this every series, and then he just continues to do the same thing, and it works. But, I think eventually it runs its course and doesn't work in the end, where he has just one starter out there. I think in an NBA Finals series, you've got to have at least 2 of them. And he's done a better job in this series where I've noticed it more, where he's gotten 2 of the starters out there together. But I just feel the all bench unit with Pascal, or the all bench unit with Tyrese, it lacks offensive flow. It lacks 2 ball handlers at times. I think you've got to have a combination of Siakam, McConnell, Nembhard, and Tyrese out there together, because they do a majority of the ball handling. And I do feel like there are times where it's just one of them out there. And it's a struggle to try to get any kind of offense going. And if TJ's not getting to the paint effectively, that slows down his effectiveness on the offensive end. And he's an okay defender, but he's not going to give you a ton of shutdown minutes on a lot of these guys just because of the size of OKC's wings. So I don't know. It just a lot of stuff to really try to dissect from game 2. I think the biggest thing, though, for me was just the fact that Halliburton did exactly what he does when he struggles in games. And it's not a surprise to any of us. I don't think it's been a glaring weakness that he's had that, or more glaring than what it was already, what already existed is what I meant to say. I don't think that it's any different. I do think that OKC has the ability to throw as many guys at you as possible. So that's where it's a little different, where he doesn't really catch a break, because there are a lot of games where he caught breaks just because the primary defender on him would have to sub out or would have to drop off the assignment some just to give that person a break, where they throw Caruso, Wallace, and Dort at you. And it just feels like he gets overwhelmed and tired. But I think there are some things that they did in that second half of the game and in the fourth quarter where they really started to get Tyrese open. And I think a lot of that is just those double screens, some pin down actions. I think you've got to get him going downhill. And I think a lot of that's just going to be an emphasis on getting Pascal and Miles up further. And I think you're better off pulling those Oklahoma City defenders further up anyway, the bigs at least, and try to get them involved in guarding people at the top, just because when they're doing the switch, these actions that are just guards switching on to Tyrese, it eliminates any kind of effectiveness. I think you're going side to side, more of a lateral move rather than downhill and in attacking mode. And by the time it's 16 seconds left in the shot clock, 15 seconds left in the shot clock, the offense is still at the top trying to figure out in which direction Tyrese wants to go off of a screen. So I just think that it takes a very long time for this Pacers offense to get started against this Oklahoma City Thunder defense. And they are a very good defense. That is what they do to you. They make you work for your shots, and they've been much more successful in this series so far than the Pacers offense has been against a defense that, again, I feel is historic in so many different ways. But I think one thing that they really, truly buy into is the fact that there is so much help and communication at different areas that it seems impossible at times to figure out just exactly where to go next if you're an offensive player. But yeah, in the fourth quarter, I just felt Tyrese started to get it going. I think there's some confidence there. I think he realizes what needs to happen. I would be shocked if he didn't come out in the first quarter and get off at least 5 to 6 shots. I think that that's pretty likely in this game coming, or at least where you see 6 to 7 touches in the paint, where you're intentional about maybe getting Pascal involved in the paint or even Miles in the paint, just because I do think with the smaller lineup, I think they'll run it out there again because it's been pretty successful for them up until a point. I think what you really have to do is try to be very intentional about getting the 2 bigs going first and getting into the paint, because once you get into the paint, that defense does tend to collapse on itself. And that's where I think the Pacers will have the advantage at home, because if you can get the ball into the paint, the way that their defense works, a lot of weak side help, a lot of doubles come over, or kind of a shade into and try to get the ball out of the paint, which is very common for their guards to come down and try to help out the bigs to try to strip the ball away from them. I think you've got to be intentional about making them pay for the mistakes of trying to blitz you, trying to get help coverage. I think you've got to swing the basketball, hit the paint, hit the corners, because the corners, they just really struggled to defend because of the all-out blitz that they throw at your primary handlers at the top. I just feel there is so much area and room down there on that baseline and in the corners that you can really try to expose this defense. And you did see at times when the Pacers started to roll in game 1 that they started to get the Thunder start to get a little complacent. They start to make some mistakes. They start to miscommunicate. I think that there is a sense of confusion at times, just because I don't think it's necessarily missing assignments, but I think it's because of the way that they try to come after you and force the ball out of your hands and try to help defense, try to throw as much help defense as possible at guys going into the lanes. They lose track of where the shooters go. And that can be very dangerous because the Pacers don't typically shoot under 40%, which is wild to say, from three. And they don't really shoot under 48% from the field. So you're leaving very good, efficient shooters open. I think that's what the Pacers really have to lean into, is getting those mid-range shots, getting those corner threes, hitting those, the threes from Andrew Nemhard's favorite spot on the floor, which is, I think, on the left side and on the arc. It just, that little step back that he had against Shea, that's his spot. So I think you've got to find those areas on the floor where that defense is leaving holes. And I think once they start to try to overcorrect to get back to those spots, you can expose them back again in the paint. So, and again, that's the biggest thing about breaking. I know it's easier said than done, but the big thing about breaking down this defense is try to flatten them out, try to hit open shooters. You got to hit open shots. Otherwise, if you're not hitting shots, they're not worried about you shooting the basketball. They're going to try to keep you from it going inside of the arc and getting into the paint. They don't want you to get 2 feet into the paint. That's where Tyrese is most effective. It's when he can get around the elbow or into the paint and kick out. But the Thunder don't want you to do that. If you're hitting 3-pointers, they're going to come flying out on you, and you can aggressively attack those defenders and blow by them. Because while I do think that they've got good defender, I think there are some areas where you can go after them and beat them on the dribble or beat them by going inside. And I think that's something that the Pacers are going to have to be more intentional about. And the fact that Cason Wallace is still more than likely going to be guarding Pascal Siakam. I mean, I don't know if Chet will start to go over that way to try to defend him and they try to leave Miles with Cason Wallace. I don't know if that's something that they would be willing to do very long, because Miles, I think, would take advantage of that. Because while Miles is not great in the post, if he has a mismatch like that, he will oftentimes try to exploit it. And it does usually, it works pretty well, and he can get guys into foul trouble. And he's pretty decent finishing around the basket. He just doesn't do it a whole ton. But again, I think you've got to start from the inside out. And that's how you break down this defense, is get Pascal rolling, have those defenders try to collapse on him. Be aware that that's oftentimes like Caruso or Cason Wallace or J-Dub that are defending those corner shooters that don't really look like they're engaged with the play, and all of a sudden they come up from behind you and strip the ball away from you as you're trying to, put a post move on a post up, and they've got defenders in front of you, defenders around you, and they swarm, look like bees on a honeycomb, and they try to get the ball away from you. They're very handsy too. Like, that is one thing that, yes, they are historic, but it would be interesting to just go back and see what they get away with as far as the physicality, because once you get that reputation of being a really good defensive team, the refs are a little bit more like, well, that was probably just a good defensive play, rather than, no, the guy really smacked me on the arm. That's what happened. I think there are times where that happens with Oklahoma City, but I think because of the reputation they have and how good they are at turning you over cleanly, I think the refs they don't see it, but they don't really look at it that way, because they're like, well, no, that's just what they are. They're so good defensively. They got you. And there are some fouls, I think. If you look at Caruso and you look at Dort, the amount of reaching they're able to do, and then Pascal did something similar to that in game 2, and they called him a foul, and he was like, what? What? Like, they do the exact same thing. So game 2, I thought, was not ref very, it was pretty rough. It wasn't the difference in this game, but there were some calls. I'm like, okay, if you're going to let them be physical, you also got to let the Pacers be physical. So we'll see what happens in game 3. I think it'll be much better officiated, but I think the officiating's been really good throughout the playoffs for the Pacers. So not much of a criticism there, just some interesting notes and things that I took away from it. But they're going to need more volume from Pascal and better shooting from Pascal. I mean, shot a really poor percentage in game 2. Tyrese has got to get more volume. It's just, that's how it's going to be. He's got to get 10 plus shots at least. And, once he gets to that point, and he's hitting shots, then he's usually a 20 plus scorer just because he starts to get more confident, gets more involved in the offense. And it's so hard for a player like that it's been ingrained in him that he's a pass first point guard, and it works so well with this team. And that's what makes this team so dangerous because of how well they move the basketball and don't dribble. And they don't have a lot of selfish guys on this team. But, it's trying to, like, if you were out there playing, how do you find that balance, right? Most people are like, well, you got to take over when you need to take over. But when's the right point to take over? I think that's the thing that he's going to have to learn is when we're not going well on offense, that's my cue. But then again, it's like, if we're not going well on offense, it's probably because I'm not, orchestrating the offense well enough, getting guys to their open spots. It's a lose-lose. It really is. It's hard for a point guard to be your superstar player when they're not like a James Harden or SGA or Jalen Brunson, who shoot a tremendous volume. And I think at times that is their Achilles heel, is that they shoot too much. And that is why Brunson and Harden, I think, have had a hard time leading a team, is because they're the point guard. They're the one getting their other teammates involved, but they're shooting 20, 25 shots a night. So it's difficult because you don't want to fall into that, well, I'm just shooting every time I get the ball. My offense is just kind of standing and looking at me, and I can't get guys into good spots. But Tyrese is a good enough offensive player where it's like, I'd like for you to do more. It is such a tough line and a very, very difficult. If you've played basketball, you know what I mean. It is so difficult to decide when you, as the star player, decide to take over the basketball game. And usually that comes with experience. Usually it comes with more and more games played with the same teammates, with that same core. I mean, remember, and while they were together last year, they're still learning. And this is only a year and a half, 2 years now, almost, with Pascal. And you're still trying to learn how do I get him involved? How do I stay involved, but also get him involved, but also get Miles Turner going from three. Aaron Nesmith is a great shooter, so he needs his volumes too. Andrew Nembhard, great finisher, need to get him some shots as well. Loves those mid-range, very good at mid-range basketball shoot. It's so difficult. So I think that's a lot of what Tyrese struggles with. I don't think the national media will ever point that out because they don't understand it, but he is so instrumental into how everybody else is successful in the game that a lot of times I think he defers too much. Now, that being said, there are times where I do, and I think a lot of it is just he's not an explosive point guard. He's a quick point guard, but he's not strong like a LeBron James or a Doncic or obviously Giannis and Jokic and them. Like, those guys are built like houses. Tyrese is very finesse in the way that he does things. So he's got to try to figure. It's the same thing with Curry. Like, when Curry first started in the league, he was only going to hit threes. He had to figure out ways to be aggressive and to run an offense being a much smaller person. And he figured it out. Like, Tyrese will figure it out. It's just, it takes a lot, because when these guys are playing in high school and in college, they're oftentimes just too fast, where physicality, you can be as physical as you want, but if the guy's not as fast as Tyrese Halliburton or as skilled, Ty's just going to go around him. Whereas the NBA, everybody's just as fast as you are. It's difficult to try to figure out, how am I going to beat this? And the biggest thing for him, I really do, I think a lot of it is it centers around Miles Turner hitting three-pointers and hitting those shots off the pick and roll. I think Miles can alleviate some of that pressure. I think Pascal is definitely something that can unleash this offense. You just got to find him in his spots. And there are a lot of times where he's open. It's just they are so good with their hands and getting in front of Pascal and defending the front facing of Pascal. It's hard. They front him, and then because they're so active and they're good athletes, and they really recover well from the weak side to try to help eliminate the pass that goes over the defender and towards the weak side, where the weak side defender just comes over and takes the ball away from you because you try to get it up over them. It's an interesting defense to try to dissect, because they're all so good at what they do, and they star in their roles on the defensive end. But they got great performances from their role players, and that's something that Indiana didn't get as much of in this game. I mean, an okay amount, but Obi Toppin didn't have a crazy good game like he did in game one. McConnell, you need to have at least 6 to 10 points, and I thought he could have done more offensively. You usually rely on Matherin to provide you some points, and there were times where Ben looked good, but then there's times where he struggles because he can get his own shots going to the basket, but when he really tries to create offense, it can be difficult for him because he's just a really good shooter, a really good shot maker. And if he's got an advantage, he's good at taking advantage of those defenders. But if he's playing somebody pretty even or on the even playing field of him defensively, it is so hard for Ben to try to figure out how to operate and maneuver in this offense because of just where he's been, and the athleticism that usually brings him to a different level. They can usually match that OKC. So I think it's just been tough sledding for Matherin in this series as well. He had 2 points in game 2, or sorry, not 2 points. I'm looking at quarter number 2. In total, he had 14 points. He was better, I think, than obviously everybody else on the bench, but I think that, and TJ had 11 points, but I think that just their ability to create at times was lacking. And the fact that they really didn't have a great performance from one of their scorers. The highest scorer was Tyrese Halliburton, and the Thunder had 2 bench role players that outscored everybody on the Pacers team, which was Caruso and Wiggins. I mean, if you look at Aaron Wiggins had 18 points, Caruso had 20. That's a big difference to try to make up when your top scorer only had 17 points. And if you look at it, I mean, there's pretty good distribution across the Pacers players. They had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in double figures, but they were all around that 11 to 17 range. So it wasn't like there was somebody that could match not that you're going to match SGA's 34 points all the time, because that's what he's just going to get. But when you've got bench players that are outscoring everybody else on that's not good. It's not sustainable. So again, I feel like Indiana needs more from their bench. Toppin having 3 points, that kind of hurts. You had 2 double-digit scorers off the bench, but not nearly as much as what Caruso and Wiggins provide. Like if Matherin scores 20 points and Pascal has 25, like this is a totally different game. But if ands and buts, I mean, you can't always just do that, right? So I don't know. It just was not a great game all around. And then if you just look at the game charts and look at their shooting percentages and just the flow of the game, the momentum of the game, the Pacers' biggest lead was 3. It was 20 to 17 was their only lead that they had. There was one time in which it was tied. I think that was 20 to 20. And after that, OKC's biggest lead was 23 at one point. Pacers kind of dwindle it down some, but towards the end of the game, I mean, it stuck right around that 19 to 16 range, and the Pacers just could never break free of that. And so the comeback was never going to happen. If you look at their shooting, I mean, it's a really poor shooting percentage from the Pacers, and one of the worst as far as the field goal percentage that they've had all season at 45.1%. That is really bad compared to what they've done across the board in this postseason and the regular season. I mean, this seriously is right around a 48% shooting team, which is crazy to say just because that is so efficient and so very good. But that's typically where they are, and they couldn't get there. Their three-point percentage, not good at 35%. They were ice cold, going from that first to second quarter. I mean, it felt like the Pacers couldn't get anything offensively between that first and second quarter. It just after they got to 20, it was like they ran out of any kind of energy offensively. And then at the end of the half, they looked absolutely gassed. Like the defense had just been so smothering and knocking balls away, making it very difficult for the Pacers to get anything. And then when you're not seeing shots go in, I mean, it shouldn't affect you mentally and as far as your fatigue too, but it is so exhausting when you're not making shots and then they're getting some shots and they get production from bench players and guys are hitting threes and they're getting offensive rebounds. They're tipping the ball out. They're knocking balls away, deflecting it, making you work for everything. It's not fun. So yeah, I think mentally it wears you down, and that leaks into your actual physical fitness at times, just because you feel just so defeated that you start to notice that stuff more, where it's just like, gosh, we can't win, we cannot catch a break. And that's just the way the Pacers felt, that from that end of the first quarter on. It just never felt that they were in it mentally. Too many mistakes. And while they didn't turn the ball over as much, obviously, as they did in that first game, 15 is still a lot for this team. And that's kind of where they've been on the road against these teams. So I expect that number to be better, and I expect them to shoot a lot better at home. I just, this defense is so good. What will it look like on Indiana's home floor compared to what it's looked like in Oklahoma City? I think that's why Rick Carlisle is so adamant about that fan base being absolutely off the walls, because I think the Pacers would benefit from just it being loud on offense. Like, not to the point where they're having a hard time offensively creating things, but to try to just confuse their defense, or even just try to throw off their offense a little bit. Because you throw off their offense a little, like, this is not a great offensive team. They're a good offensive team. I think that they still have a lot of areas where they can grow offensively in the Thunder, but it's because of that defense, man. Like, that defense is their thing. If they are playing well defensively, they're going to beat you. If they're having some lapses and they're going through a tough stretch defensively, you can wipe the floor with them, because I do feel their offense can go cold quite a bit during games. So we'll see how the Pacers adjust to their defense as far as the Thunder are concerned, and what they do offensively to make those adjustments. But I mean, up and down their roster, they've just been a lot better than the Pacers for a majority of this series so far. And we're going to need a lot better from Indiana to go up 2-1 and even have a shot at 3-1. So yeah, that's kind of a breakdown in game two. Only a couple things I want to note or mention. SGA has 72 points in the first two games. I think he is number one on that list now as far as the best two games to ever start in NBA Finals. He has 72, which is crazy. That's how good he's been. And they're a missed shot away from being up 2-0 in this series, and us looking down the barrel of a gun and being like, wow, this is going to be really tough to even come close to even being competitive in the series. But I think so much has to change. SGA, there were a lot of times where I felt like he got way too easy shots, like at least just making work for it. Like, I get that he's going to hit those mid-range jumpers, and he's so tall and big, and he's so athletic and quick that it's hard to keep up with him. But just make him work. I mean, honestly, especially at home, I would never, and this is the Pacers' forte. They always say fight through screens because they were successful against Donovan and Brunson doing that. And that's because those two are very good three-point shooters. I think what you really have to do is you have to bait SGA into try to taking more threes. He is a decent three-point shooter, but he is not great. And if he starts cold, he will stay cold. It's kind of how he goes as far as three-pointers are concerned. There were games against Minnesota where I was just like, man, he just doesn't have – that is one area of his game where he just doesn't seem to have as much confidence in. I think he's very confident defensively. He's very confident once he gets inside the arc. But there's still some hesitation that he doesn't really – he's not one that really wants to take you into a pick and roll and then fire a three right off of the pick. Like, that's just not his game. He likes to dribble the ball. He likes to get to his spot. He loves that spot right there around the elbow where he can kind of twist and turn. And I think you really do. I think you got to go under picks. And I know it's not the Pacers thing, but with how quick Andrew Nembhard is and good defensively he is, and how lengthy Miles Turner is, because that's often who they're bringing to that pick, I just feel that the Pacers might actually be more aggressive and more of an advantage if they would just drop kind of into that drop coverage of, if you're going to shoot it, go ahead. Like, try to beat us by hitting threes. If he makes them, he makes them. Obviously, you don't want to leave him wide open, but I think you try to cut off his lane in which he wants to get down into the paint. I just feel like he is so much more effective there than he would ever be from the three-point line. But again, the Pacers are so adamant about getting through and fighting through screens. I think this is where you're kind of at a disadvantage because that's what he wants you to do. So we'll see if that's an adjustment that is made. But right now, SGA is getting things way easier than like Giannis did during his series, Donovan did during the Cavs series, and I'd even say Brunson. Like, I just feel like there's not really been much pressure on SGA. Game one, I thought Nembhard was really good against him. Game two, I didn't feel like there was any pressure on him, and he just took advantage of that. You just got to make him work. I mean, he's going to get 30 points at least. Just make him work for him. What else? He did get to the line more, SGA did, which was, and people always say foul merchant, but really, he's not. When you watch him in the postseason, he's really not been. I think they've done a nice job of calling the whistle on him. What else? Chet Holmgren was really good in this game. Came out a lot better, looked a lot more comfortable. Only had 6 points while shooting 2 of 9 from the field on Thursday night. Holmgren scored 9 first quarter points, shooting 4 of 5 from the field, and leading OKC to that 26-20 lead at the end of the first. Was a factor on both ends. He had 6 rebounds and a block. Ended the game with 15. I mean, you look at J-Dub too. Let's go with J-Dub's stats first. J-Dub, same draft as Holmgren, so they're both third-year players. Also struggled in game 1, 6 and 19 for shooting effort from the field and 17 points in game 1. He finished with 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in game 2. But those two weren't great. Like, they were good. But I didn't feel like – I feel that if the Pacers don't go ice cold in that second quarter, don't let them absolutely destroy you, because – honestly, they stayed pretty close with them the rest of the game. It was that end of the first, beginning of the second that just ruined them. They were relatively close on the score sheet, and I thought, as far as the offense was concerned, I thought they were pretty on par with them in game 2 until that really bad 19 or whatever run. Like, it was incredible, the run they went on. But I feel that the Pacers' cold shooting matched with just Caruso and Wiggins not going cold and being huge during that stretch, and Holmgren being big in that first quarter. Like, those were the 3 players that really kept OKC at that lead, because you take out one of them, and I feel like the Pacers would have been in a little bit of a tighter game, obviously. Like, if you limit one of those, you're in a much better position. But those 3 got it going in the first quarter. But in the second half, I didn't feel like Chet didn't really have to do much in the second half because they were already out to a big lead. So you kind of lean more into Caruso and Wiggins, who were having good games. But I really do. I've not felt that they have lived up to like a number 2 option, which is usually not a good thing for a team to try to win a series. I mean, Alex Caruso and Aaron Wiggins were arguably their number 2 option in this game, and then Chet, and then J-Dub. Game 1, those 2 were pretty much non-existent, and I still feel that the Pacers have that advantage where they've been through more of this as far as experience. I'm interested to see what J-Dub, he's not been that great on the road, and Chet's really not been that great on the road either. So what will happen with those 2 as we go into Gainbridge? Also, Aaron Wiggins. I think Caruso will be fine because he's used to that. But those 3 are so inexperienced, and being in the road in this kind of environment, let's be honest, like, Minnesota is probably pretty close to what Gainbridge is, but Gainbridge can be an absolute advantage too. I don't think that's the other thing too, is you look back at the regular season, the Pacers have only played 1 game in Paycom, and the Thunder have only played 1 game in Gainbridge. And those are games that they're not going to have the same intensity as playoff games, so you don't get the real feel of it. But this is a whole different environment that I think the Thunder are getting ready to step into. And I think that's what fans really got to bring it. Just be relentless for some of these. These are third-year players. I mean, it's pretty safe to say that if they follow trend of a third-year player, they're going to have really bad moments. You have to live with them. And I think that the Pacers can try to exploit that, I think, more so at home than on the road. What else? Anything else that I want to mention? I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it as far as game 2. There wasn't a whole lot to really write home about. I wasn't really Miles Turner had a really good third quarter. I did have that in the rundown over here on YouTube. So if you're not watching on YouTube, we're at the Pacers Fever Show over there. You can subscribe, like, and comment. or also anywhere you can find audio podcast. But Miles was really good in the third quarter. They needed that. And I think that's really good confidence going forward. I think you've got some good performances out of guys at the end of games that might not show on, obviously, it will show on the stat sheet, but might not show as far as just how much that might have meant for Miles and Tyrese, the end that they had to game 2. That might be a little bit of, because while I know it's game to game in the playoffs, players still gain momentum when they see the ball go through the basket, no matter what game they're playing in. If Tyrese is like, you know what, I found some things there, or Miles like, all right, starting to feel a lot better about my shot. Those are two instrumental players in what we're doing in our offense. And I think two of the biggest points of inflection for the Pacers when it comes to breaking down this defense outside of Pascal. So that's big. It could loom large. The third quarter that Miles had and the fourth that Tyrese had at Paycom. What else? Yeah, let's move on to game 3. Kind of going through, looking at just different things that were said when it comes to media day. So I haven't really been able to keep up with it because I've been at work, and then I've been preparing to do, or I was preparing to do the podcast that I do for soccer, and then I'm recording this podcast after the soccer one. So not really had much chance to get on socials to run through media day. But Tyrese Halliburton update, he's fine. He said that it's just the normal wear and tear of a series. He's not, honestly, he's always had back issues, and I think that's probably what flared up some. He's always had problems with that, though. Like, he's always kind of been pretty ginger after some of these big games like this. I think he's fine. I mean, you look at the way that he carries himself. I think that he is very, in a good way, a very emotional guy. I think he takes losses pretty hard. I think he's a great competitor. I think he takes them pretty hard, and he gets really down on himself. But he's always been a great responder. So we'll see what happens. And he did say it's a lower leg thing, but he said, honestly, he feels fine to be able to go. And I do. I think unless it said that he was going to get his leg knocked off, I think he was going to be out there. So we will see if that has any lasting effect. But from everything that I've seen as far as walkthroughs, like I'm kind of going through looking at videos and stuff, he's running through walkthroughs fine. I don't really notice anything like as far as limps or anything like that. Aaron Nesmith was great in talking about just what it means to be back in that building for 25 years. He's imploring the fans to bring it. I want the fans to go in there and try to one up what OKC does. Obviously, I will say this, and it is true. OKC does manufacture a lot of that noise. The music is really loud, and those clappy things, like they have those like fan looking things that make those really loud noises. Like if you've ever had those clappers, like they're loud. I mean, they're a lot louder than what you can normally make as a human being. It's not like they're screaming a whole ton. It's not like they're doing the that kind of stuff they do in college. It's a lot of manufactured noise. I will say Gainbridge's electricity fans yelling, chanting, that kind of, it feels more college level. No offense, Paycom, but it is a lot of manufactured noise on their side. That drum thing that he hits all the time. But we will see how they respond, the fans, because I think that that's something that could really help the Pacers in game 3 and game 4 as those head back to Gainbridge, previewing game 3, where we were jumping ahead. Game 3, back home again in Indiana. OKC on the road in the playoffs, 4-3. Here are the results. They had a 6-point win in game 1 against the Grizzlies, game 3 against the Grizzlies. It would not have been game 1. Game 4 against the Grizzlies, because they did sweep them. They only had a 2-point win, and these are without Ja Morant, I believe, because I think he was out early in the series. 9-point loss in game 3 against the Nuggets, a 5-point win against the Nuggets in game 4, and then a game 6 12-point loss to the Nuggets. Game 3 against the Wolves, 42-point loss, and then a game 4 win against the Wolves, a 2-point win. Looking at their numbers, Oklahoma City 9-2 in these playoffs, record at home, 82% winning percentage. They won, 82% of their games at home. They've only won 57% of their games on the road. They've played 7, at 4-3. Net rating at home, plus 21.6. If you look at their net rating on the road, minus 6.2. True shooting percentage, 60% at home. True shooting percentage on the road, 53%. That's not good for a true shooting percentage. Usually at 60 is a good mark, but I mean, it's good. Not like the Pacers, I think were at 64, 65 at some point. In that, was it the Knicks series? No, I think it was the Cavs series. But they have a better true shooting percentage. The Pacers do at home and on the road than what OKC does. If you look at turnover ratio at home, 11.3 for OKC, 11.9 on the road. So pretty similar in their turnover numbers. Here's the biggest difference that you'll notice. This is, I mean, obviously, if you go back to net rating, you can figure this out pretty well. But look at this. Offensive rating at home, OKC, 120.9. Defensive rating at home, 99.3. That's crazy. That's good. You go on the road, offensive rating, 108.2. That is a 12-point margin there on the offensive rating side. And if you look at their defensive rating, here's the glaring one. Again, 99.3 at home. On the road in this postseason, the Thunder are 114.7 on the road. That's a 15-point difference on the road. So they are very similar to everybody else we have seen, and honestly, probably worse because they don't do much on the offensive end as far as when they play on the road. Because like I said, I mean, their offense is nothing to be like amazed. Like SGA is a great offensive player, but there are a lot of different areas of improvement for the Thunder, I think, on the offensive end. I think J-Dub's going to get better. Chet's going to get better, but like it's not there yet. So I think they could be a lot better. And it shows on the road. I mean, those are inexperienced players going into hostile environments. The Pacers really do have a chance here to make it very interesting on this Thunder team. Pacers at home, 6-2, 175% of their games. They are 7-3 on the road. That is so impressive, the fact that they have only lost 4 games on the road. Net rating at home, plus 5.7. Net rating on the road, plus 0.4. True shooting percentage at home, 61%. On the road, 61%. Turnover ratio, 11.3 at home. Really good numbers. On the road, 15.4. Not good. Here is where I think it gets really interesting. At home, the Indiana Pacers offensive rating is 117.5. Remember, on the road, the offensive rating for OKC is 108.8 or 108.2. So a 9-point difference there between the two offensive ratings. On the road, 116.1 offensive rating for the Pacers. Defensive rating at home, 111.8. And defensive rating on the away floors, 115.7. So they are a better defensive team on their home floor, the Pacers are. So all of those things trend really well for the Pacers, especially the fact that OKC's defense is right up there with what the Pacers provide defensively on the road. And we've seen what the Pacers have done on the road at points in this postseason. It's not been great. So you can get to this Oklahoma City Thunder defense on the road when they're playing on the road. So the Pacers need to continue to just play their game, because I do think that in time against Oklahoma City, I think you will have the advantage on the offensive end. Might be the first time in the whole series where you felt that way, where you feel like, man, that they could have quite an advantage here if they just play their basketball. And Oklahoma City doesn't go nuclear with their defense. If they just come out and are absolutely crazy, which most teams are not on the road. They're just trying to survive. It's very much survival mode and win. I think those numbers, and even looking at their performances against other teams on the road, this team has struggled to shoot on the road. They are under 40% shooting 3-pointers anyways, but they really struggle to shoot 3-pointers on the road. This OKC team does. And they're just going to struggle to score. I think that's a big advantage for Indiana. If the trend continues in the way that it has, this is a team that is going to get right around that 104, 108, 110 mark, where I think the Pacers can easily break that at home. The energy of the crowd, the role players hitting more shots, I think you're going to get some really good bench production. I think the Pacers will take this as, we haven't played well. We've got an opportunity here to really make it tough on Oklahoma City, because if you win game 3, that is a lot of pressure for them to have to win game 4. And as much as it is crazy to say, I really would not be shocked. Like, if the Pacers are going to win a title, the Pacers, I think, are going to have to win these 2 games. I think there's a lot of people that disagree with that. They're like, well, not necessarily. I think you could go out of here 2-2 and still feel pretty good. I think you could feel good, but I don't think you would feel – I still feel like you feel like, okay, that's going to be really hard to beat OKC at their place 2 times in this postseason in a 7-game set. I really do feel that the Pacers could absolutely take control and pretty much all but bury OKC if they win these 2 games in Indianapolis, which they are very capable of doing. I think the Pacers are very capable of winning 2 games in Indy. That's probably the most confident we'll feel of the whole series, because I think if it gets past game 4 and we're tied 2-2, I really have a hard time seeing the Pacers win it. I could see them forcing a game 7, but I would have a hard time seeing the Pacers win it. I think you lose it in 7 maybe. But again, game 7s, anything can happen. Pressure can get to somebody. But, man, would it not feel good to get out of here 3-1? Then you just have to win 1 more to close them out. They have to win 3 straight games. So the Pacers need to come out and play with just so much intensity and explosiveness and confidence. And it might not be the breakneck pace that you want, but I think you can get to a level at home against this team that they haven't quite seen in this series, because, again, like I said, I think that their defense will regress some here on the road, because it's shown it has, and they've shown that they've really struggled to score at points on the road. So young players shooting in hostile environments, typically not as easy for a team that's only played at Gainbridge really once this season, obviously, but really once with this core. So we'll see how they do, how they shoot the basketball, what they can do defensively. Can they be that juggernaut of a defense for 2 games here in Indianapolis? Obviously, they're still going to be a good defensive team, but can they do what they've done to the Pacers in the last 2 games? I don't think so. Again, there's just a whole different vibe when you take this show on the road, when you try to win with defense on the road and struggle offensively. Feel pretty good about that. After I saw those numbers, I felt like, you know what? The Pacers could very well win 2 games in Gainbridge Fieldhouse if they play just the way that they've been playing all postseason. I could see it. Looking at adjustments, what adjustments can the Pacers make? I think ultimately what you've got to do is obviously make SGA work harder for his 34 points, 38 points, whatever he's going to get. Make him work harder. He's going to get he's going to get over 30. But can you make it where it's a very tiring 34, right? Where he's missed, a handful of shots that he usually makes, where he's met with some contact that he might not usually feel, right? Can you make things a little bit more difficult on him? And then can you eliminate some of these role players? Can Aaron Wiggins not hit all of his 3-pointers at this point? It felt like. Can you get Caruso under 20 points? I think so. Does J-Dub continue to struggle shooting the basketball on away floors. I think so. Chet, again, I've not been really, I mean, he had a really good first quarter, but outside of that, he's been okay. I think Miles has done a pretty good job on him. And then Hartenstein, of course, keeping him off the offensive glass, keeping Caruso off the offensive glass, forcing Dort to hit shots. I know that he's very streaky, that he could hit games where he hits 5, or then there's other games where he doesn't hit the broadside of a barn. So, again, making their role players just feel the pressure. I think that's going to be a big adjustment that the Pacers are going to have to make. Make SGA really work hard and make those others really beat you. Defend them like you've not defended anything else in your life. I mean, you've got, 5 more games left if it goes 7? I mean, now's the time to really just leave it all out there. And I think that the Pacers have the bench to do it. I think they have the crowd to do it. I think that when you look back at the very beginning of this series, if you would have said again that we were going back home 1-1, we took one on the road that we really shouldn't have gotten, that you would feel very confident in what this Pacers team has done. And then you read out those stats that I just read where their defense is not what it is at home that it is on the road. Can you make up the difference there? Can you keep it competitive? Can you put them in crunch time? They have not seen crunch time much. Make them work for wins. Whereas I felt like that last game, you didn't have to work for it, right? Just kind of let them have it. That'll be the biggest difference. As far as adjustments for Tyrese Halliburton, I think you've got to get him free. I think you've got to get him involved early. I mean, I think we're not a team that really draws up plays, but I think the first handful of possessions, I think you got to really lean into double pick and rolls, a lot of actions with he and Pascal and Miles. I think you got to get him going downhill, downhill, downhill. Even if he turns it over or misses a layup or gets fouled, like just go, just figure out what happens, like get into the paint and figure it out from there. Be so intentional about getting into the paint that you make it seem that you are at least going to get there throughout the rest of it. Because I think if you get in there 5 times, 6 times, where it's just constant pressure on the paint, you're going to start to collapse their defense. You will. And if you're hitting open shots, which I expect them to hit a lot of open shots in this next game, I honestly, I would not be so shocked if they go for one of those 42%, 3-point shooting barrages that they do at times, or like light up the scoreboard with threes. Because I will say that they are getting open threes. I mean, as good as this defense has been, it's not necessarily been in the flow of the offense, but the Pacers have been able to get off some threes. They've just not hit them at a high rate in game 2. But I think you're going to get a higher clip in game 3 at home. You typically do get that burst at home. So we'll see what the Pacers do as far as the offense is concerned. But I think another adjustment, you got to get Pascal involved as well. I think you get more screenage for him. Maybe it's a lot more Pascal and Tyrese too. I mean, I know Tyrese and Miles are just so effective. They're one of the best pick and roll combinations in the league. But I feel like you got to get Pascal involved as well if you're going to get into double screens and trying to throw off some of this coverage. I think you got to run them through as many actions as possible to get Tyrese open, and that'll open up everybody else. Miles just have to hit those threes. That's big. When he's hitting those threes, it pulls the defense. Spacing, that'll be key. Those will be the adjustments that they need to make. Keys to the game, speaking of. So keys to the game, obviously, number 1 is going to be get Tyrese as involved as possible. He needs to get at least 5 or 6 shots, I think, in the first quarter. Or if it's not 5 or 6 shots in the first quarter, like I said, I think it's 5 to 6 touches in the paint where he feels like he's distributing and he's getting involved in those actions and he's making those plays that he normally makes, getting a couple assists, getting 4 to 6 points in the quarter. I think that would be huge for Tyrese. Maybe hit a 3, right? Because we've seen that when he hits his first basket in the game, I think the Pacers go like 14-2 or something like that. So we'll see what happens, what they do with Tyrese. I keep saying we see what happens, don't I? Key number 2, again, I think another one, you got to lean into Pascal. You've got to force feed him at times. I really do think that. I think you've got to – he puts so much pressure because they constantly send help when he gets the basketball because their size, even with Hartenstein and Chet, I still feel like they throw a lot of bodies at Pascal because he's just so difficult to try to guard for some of these guys. I think that's one of the biggest advantages and might be the biggest disadvantage that the Pacers have is Pascal and whoever's guarding him in this series. I feel like he's very good at what he does, and I don't know if they really have the personnel to really stop him from doing what he's doing unless they put Dort down there, and they're not willing to take him off Tyrese most of the time. He'll do it every once in a while when Caruso's in because Dort will shift over to Pascal, but I think if Case and Wallace is there or Chet, like just go at him. I mean, you just attack, see what happens on that side of the basket. No, I'm kidding. Don't see what happens because you keep doing that. Key number three. I'm going to say that getting the offensive rebounds, right? That'll be crucial. I think if you can get some offensive rebounds, create some turnovers, get out and run a little bit. I mean, obviously not going to run a ton on this team like you like to do, but I think you have some opportunities here because their defense, I don't think, is going to be as stealthy in games 3 or 4 on the road. I think you might even have some of those leak outs that you got against the Knicks. Maybe it's not a ton, but maybe once or twice throughout these next 2 games where you kind of make them pay for ball watching or whatever they might do, because they do still do it. They do still make mistakes. They've done it in this series, but just very few compared to some of these other teams. Another key, again, I think the turnovers, you got to limit those as much as possible. I think staying right around that below 10 level is what you really want to do against this OKC team. Because I think if you stay below 10, you're going to cause really difficult times on a team that really relies on getting points off of turnovers. They really want to score off of turnovers. And because they weren't able to get some of those in that second half of that game, that really is what stymied some of their defensive prowess, was the Pacers' ability to hang on to the basketball. It made them less effective defensively. And when you do that, it does seem as if the Thunder will let you score. They're good defensive, but I think you can still score 30 points a quarter if you just limit the amount of turnovers against this team, which is still a good quarter. And honestly, I think would wear this team down because, like I said, the Pacers got worn out by this defense, but I think the Pacers offense could do the opposite and wear down the OKC defense if they just continue to move the basketball, get into really good areas and knock down shots and cause them all sorts of pain and pressure, and then pressure them on the defensive side. And that's my last key is I think it's time to kind of flip the script, right? Get physical with them on defense. Make them absolutely work. You've got 2 really good defenders. I would even say 3 with Pascal at times, and then Miles. Combine them, you got 3 really good defenders. Great shot blocker in Miles. I think a good on-ball defender at Pascal. I think he causes some problems with his length, and he's been pretty decent defensively. I think that with Nembhard and Nesmith, you just keep running them at Shea and just absolutely hound their role players. Do not let their role players get involved as much as possible. Put so much pressure on them that they don't even want to try, right? I think that's a big key in this game is not only in the offensive side, but I think defensive scheme for the Indiana Pacers. I think the Pacers could win this on the defensive side, which is crazy to say, but I think that the defense for the Pacers could be a problem for this OKC team if OKC is not hitting shots. But that'll be it. I'm not going to make any predictions for game 3. I'm just going to enjoy it. Again, sorry that I had to do this as one combined episode, but I wanted to get this done tonight so that I could have it up tonight. And you can listen to it later on in the evening, or if you want to listen to this on your commute to work on Wednesday or before the game on Wednesday. We really appreciate the support so far. It's been a lot of fun. Again, bouncing back from an illness. And if you listen to the Fever side of this, I was bummed because it's like, all right, we can start doing game recaps after each of the games and I won't miss another game. But then I had to miss the game recap because I had to get this episode up tonight and the Fever are getting ready to play. So I had to do it. I was not able to get a preview / recap up from the last Fever game and previewing this Fever game coming up. But we should be back on target now because feeling a lot better. And after the game on Tuesday or maybe Wednesday before the Pacer game. So we'll see. I don't know if I want to stay up that late. I've been staying up late to record some of these. So this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for following along. If you followed along this far, it's been quite the journey. I can't believe the Pacers in the NBA Finals. I can't believe they're hosting a game of the NBA Finals at Gainbridge Fieldhouse at a 1-1 tie against the team that's been one of the most historic teams in NBA history. So looking forward to the opportunity that Game 3 will present tomorrow night, again at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. That is Wednesday, June 11th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Game 3. Again, not making a prediction, but let me know what your predictions are. What do you think happens in this Game 3 against OKC? What are you looking forward to seeing? What are some things that need to happen? What are your keys to the game? What are some adjustments you would have made from Game 2 into Game 3? How important is it for the Pacers to get Game 3? Is it a must-win in your eyes? Is it a must to come out of this with a split at least? Or do you think if the Pacers split, like I do you think that the series is probably going to go to OKC? I just find it, I would think it's going to be very difficult to win in OKC. So I think the Pacers, again, my prediction at the very beginning of the series was 6 games. So if you do the math and you don't think I have confidence in the Pacers winning in OKC, you know what my predictions are here, that they take these 2 games and win Game 6. Home floor, could you imagine? That'd be great. A home floor celebration of you winning your first NBA title. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Got a lot to work to do. And to be honest with you, I think everybody probably feeling the same way I do. A lot of people saying that OKC are the favorites again, that they're in control, that they just don't see how the Pacers can do this for this long and continue to win games against OKC. They just feel like it's still a gentleman's sweep or OKC win in 6. So let me know what your thoughts are. Leave some comments. If you want, leave us a rating, a 5-star, hopefully, over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you put your podcast ratings. It will help us out, helps people find us, helps the community grow. Still looking for a co-host. So if you're interested in co-hosting this with me or even as a guest, you can jump on and we can talk Pacers. Or if you want to jump on the Fever side of things, you don't have to do Pacers. If you want to do co-host and you want to be on the Fever side of it, but don't really want to cover the Pacers, or if you want to cover the Pacers, but not the Fever side of it, totally get that. Totally understand that. But just let me know. Shoot me a message over on X. Like I said, we are on all socials at the Pacers Fever Show, X, Instagram, Facebook, and soon to be TikTok. We'll be doing a lot of coverage of Fever over on TikTok. We'll probably launch that channel / feed or whatever you call that TikTok profile with Fever content and then off-season stuff for the Indiana Pacers. But again, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time. Hopefully we are talking a Game 3 Pacers win as we look for a 3-1 series lead heading into Game 4. But crazier things are happening, and that's a really good team. So let's go Pacers. Let's do it. Let's win Game 3.